excellent. So glad to see you again, Ana Caramujo of Savvy Cat, for this webinar, Portugal Calling webinar from Expats Portugal. Everything you want to know about buying and renting in Portugal, and why, in brackets, you should be thinking about using a buyer's agent. So as you said, Ana, it's been a year or so. You've been amazingly busy. I think your business has grown fantastically since we last spoke. Can you give us a little bit of a rundown on that?
Yeah, like every business, it always has its ups and downs. And I actually went through a bit of a rough patch after in the lower end, the final track of last year, because a lot of people postponed their trips and their travel because of COVID, which is to be expected. But because of the way that my business model is structured, it was very heavy on the company, because everyone that works with me has salaries, and that obviously has weight. So I went through a bit of a rough past there, but now it seems everyone is remembering they want to come to Portugal now. So it's becoming very, very busy.
Yeah. And where are you seeing the interest, the trends here? Certainly a Wall Street Journal piece doesn't hurt, does it? As we saw just recently.
Yeah, it's but I do think that Portugal is a very popular location, not only because of the geographical location and how it's positioned regarding Europe, but how it's, on the end and on the coast, the whole war situation. It's not going to make it less popular, especially within Europe, because it's still one of the most attractive and safe destinations we can think of within Europe. But on top of that, you know why you're here. So you have the great climate, the great food. Things are getting less affordable from a local perspective, but Portugal is attracting a lot of immigration from wealthier countries. And if you come here with a foreign wage, you have an amazing quality of life.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely right. Good evening, Alison Marty, Ana Vieira, who's here in Cascais, Jeff, to name but a few, and Stuart, thank you for being here. Shameen and Amin, Christine, fantastic. Great to see you all here. An excellent question, of course, from Jeff, I think it came from. Why Savvy Cat? Before we go any further, why did you call yourself Savvy Cat?
Yeah, I actually answered that the last time too. I just like cats. I'm a crazy cat lady, but also because of what cats represent, the flexibility and the being savvy and business smart, and not just going with the first thing, but actually, picking.
Standing by the door and deciding if they want to go out or not, and being a little bit more considerate and wise. Okay, so there you are. You are the Savvy Cat of the real estate world here in Portugal. Sorry, did you want to add more to that?
No, I actually wanted to go back to the first question, because I didn't really answer the first part of it. There is where in Portugal is getting the most attention on my end, at least, because I work with the whole country and my team is just about fully structured now. So I have someone in the Algarve, someone in Alentejo, someone in Lisbon, someone in Coimbra, someone in Caldas, someone in Porto, and someone in Braga. So as you can see, my team has grew quite a lot, and we have the full coverage now. And we have been getting a lot of interest to the north side. And I think that is because you have a very good price quality. And the truth is, in the north, you have absolutely amazing landscapes. And there is this misconception from expats that it's colder, when it's really not. It's a minor difference. Sure, it gets a bit colder in the winter, but throughout the average, it's not that much of the difference. You won't get, 40 degrees in the summer that often, but for me, that's a plus. I don't like 40 degrees. I melt.
Yeah. But you're not alone in that. I know somebody who landed in the north. They drove from Finland just recently and came into the north. And they were really glad to get to the Silver Coast, because it was cooler here than it was in the north at the moment in Ponta Lima.
Yeah, that whole Silver Coast thing kind of confuses me, because is Silver Coast the whole Atlantic coast, or is it the Caldas area? Is it above Lisbon? Because each person refers it to it differently. Like I've seen the Porto up area being called the Green Coast, so I never really know where that comes from. And honestly, Portuguese people that don't work with expats never use that.
No. And you're asking me. I mean, I heard today in the definition of the Silver Coast, it includes Tamar. Now, most people, when they're defining anything in Portugal, will want to include Tamar in it. Yes, so only this morning on a Facebook group, Tamar is included in the Silver Coast, which I suppose if you draw a line going east from, let's say, south of Aveiro and north of the capital, you might catch Tamar in there. But I think it's a lot to do with the seaboard here. And Andrew telling us north of Peniche, and I think south of Aveiro. Okay, but that will continue to run and run. I think that particular debate about what is the Silver Coast.
It's very like each person defines it differently. It's not very practical, honestly.
No, okay,
because people from the Algarve will refer of the Silver Coast as the Alentejo Coast. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so be careful if you are buying and you're told it's a Silver Coast. Just check that your reference to the Silver Coast.
Yeah, check where the Silver Coast is.
Yeah, absolutely. So the north then is the phenomenon of the moment. It would appear from your point of view, and you've got people all over the country. Where are you finding the interest from around the world is coming in right now?
It's a bit, I work with people from around the world, and it depends a lot on the criteria of people, because the way that I work is very different from the usual real estate, because it's not just about real estate. It's also about Portugal itself. So it's also about finding the location and getting to know the location and understanding what location is the fit for each individual person. And this is a very personal process. It depends a lot on what your lifestyle is and what you want to go close to, what kind of landscape you enjoy, what kind of activities you want, what kind of distance you want to be from, major airports or transportation. Do you want to have your own transportation? Do you want to use public transport? There is a lot of things that we consider when we are recommending zones to people. So I usually have an initial call with my clients, and I get to know them a bit and listen to their requirements and lifestyle. And I recommend a few locations that I think could be a fit for what I've heard so far. And I tend to get it right, and I tend to pick one of those eventually. But it depends a lot, because I had a client recently that looked in the Algarve, in Porto, and in Lisbon. She ended up buying in Lisbon because I think she was really set on Lisbon from the start, but she wanted to consider other locations. But it depends a lot on each person. So I think there is no straight answer to that.
Okay, well, let's get into this whole business of why people should consider having a buyer's agent. And I think a lot of it is what you've just said, right? Your average real estate agent, if you're from the UK, will be focusing on the property and trying to sell that property to make the commission. What you just said there as a buyer's agent, as you identify yourself, is you're about the person buying the house. Am I making the right differentiation?
Yes, that's a big part. But for me, that's more about the way I work. That's different even from a buyer agent. The buyer agent is usually more just about property, and I take a much wider range. So I help my clients from visa to choosing the place, to choosing the location, to finding the place, to inspecting the place, renovating the place, or building the place. So I do the whole line from leaving the country to getting actually settled here. And that's not the normal model of buyer agents, but I think it's important to have the buyer agent, even the normal model, because the way the real estate market works in Portugal, and the way the real estate market works in Portugal is that agents work for the seller. And if agents work for the seller, it's in their best interest to have higher prices. And that's obviously not in the buyer's best interest. And on top of that, this is leading to way too fast and unsustainable rising prices, because there is no regulation on the real estate market. In most cases, the sellers will just come to the market and say, I want this price, and the real estate agents will get their commission on top, and that's how prices are decided. You don't have an actual study and a comparison, and the market is kind of a mess because most sellers don't want to give exclusivity. And this creates a very competitive market where agencies work against each other more than they work with each other. So they will try to hide locations, they will hide information, they will tell the buyers everything they want to hear, but not what it actually is. it happens way more often, and I hear this way too often. People that bought properties and the agent told them they could do everything they wanted, and when they actually got to the part of doing what they wanted after they bought the property, they found out they couldn't do any of that.
Yes.
So this is the important part, I think, about having buyer agent. And I don't think work exclusively with me. I have the advantage of covering the whole country, but there are buyer agents that are focused on locations. And I have a whole agency behind, but there's some private people doing the same thing. And I'm sure there is competent people around. But I think it's very important for two reasons. One is making sure you are not scammed and you are actually getting what you want and not what you think you want and are told by the sellers that it is. And two is help preventing the inflation of prices, and have actually someone on your behalf that tells you, no, this is overpriced. And this is getting harder and harder because there is a lot of buyers on the market. Yes. So, supply and demand. If there is someone willing to pay it, it's okay. It's overpriced, but somebody is willing to pay it. There's not much I can do about it. But at least I can give the actual feedback or saying, look, this is overpriced. I can tell you the average price. I can send you a report. We have a software for that. We can tell you why this is overpriced. We can do the verification. I usually get an engineer or an architect to verify the property prior to selling. If my clients want to renovate or construct, I will give them budgets and timelines, and they will know exactly what they're getting.
Perfect. Okay, so I think you made some interesting references to the state, if I'll use that word, of the Portuguese real estate industry. And you've talked about yourself there as being an agent, a buyer's agent. When in fact, I mean, really, you're like I'm a
relocation manager, so to say.
Like a specialist, a manager, a Sherpa, a concierge. But I guess it's one step at a time, isn't it, to take Portugal from where it is now in terms of real estate. So that's a phrase that people will understand, the buyer's agent, and it certainly conveys the idea that you're working for the buyer, and it's not this traditional situation where obviously most agents are selling for or are marketing for the seller, and they're looking for the biggest price, and they're not going to be working in the same way as you. Is that about right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if anybody has been in any of these tricky situations, one of which Anna mentioned just now, please put those situations in the chat, and we will see if we can get some answers from Anna on those, on how best to address it. And probably the answer will be to work with Anna. Do you have any other? Do you have an illustration, Anna, of this trajectory? Could you give us a case study? Obviously, you don't have to go into any personal details for people, but how you've taken somebody from their initial interest, seeing Portugal, maybe in that Wall Street Journal article, and then landing them safely here, and then getting the builders in, maybe.
Okay, so the first step is to book an advisory call with me. I don't take clients without talking to them first. And I make sure that we are on the same page and I understand their needs and they understand my service. And only after having this initial conversation, we move forward. And in this conversation, I will ask them a number of questions regarding their choice, why they come to Portugal, what's their timing to come to Portugal, why what they are looking for, what is the important factors? Is it the landscape? Is it the size of the house? Is it having a lot of neighbors? Is it having no neighbors at all? It happens.
Of course.
And I also try to understand, are they coming in family? Are they coming here to retire? Will they be working here? So I really try to get them to know them and their background a bit. And then usually people also have questions for me and I also answer those questions. So it always goes both ways. I will give the advice needed. Lots of people also ask me about investment and buying to rent out. And I give a lot of information on how that would work and what's the regimes and what options they have. And if we, by the end of this call, if you are all on the same page, then I eventually take them on as clients. We already do, you were mentioning this before, I have three main packages. The way that I work is that I ask for an initial 20% down payment of the total amount of the package. This down payment gives access to all the digital services. So this includes research, advisory. This is both advisory when it comes to location, when it comes to feedback on properties, and when it comes to legal advisory, because we also support on the visa and the buying process. And I have a lawyer on contract that reviews everything that goes through. I also work with an accountant that I go to when there's more specific tax issues that I need to clarify. And the client has access to all this part with the first 20%. And when the first part is usually starting to narrow down the location, sometimes the people are already decided. So that's the first package we have is the decided pack for those people that are already like, okay, I want to go to this place.
Let's go.
That's it.
Yeah.
So let's go. You don't need to go through the whole agents and finding out what the place you like the most. Yeah. Just go there. Then we have the second package is the wanderer that already predicts exploring different locations and working with more than one agent. I am more on the background technical side of things, and I provide all the technical advice, and I get way more involved in the investment situations and when things get to the numbers. But my agents are more active on a daily activities and feedback, and clients will talk to them way more often than they talk to me. And clients can talk to, depending if they get the Wanderer package, they can talk to multiple agents and discuss multiple locations, but then they have to narrow it down to 2 locations.
Okay, and that's a wanderer with an A, isn't it? As in they're wandering around the country looking for the right place, rather than wandering with an O and wondering about where to be. Okay, so we've got the decided and the wanderer. What's your third package? Investor. So this is for the big things, and I have some big development projects going on that I'm managing. So I have one for 3 buildings, 160 apartments in Porto that I've been accompanying the whole process. So I go to town hall to make sure everything is on track before the actual signing. Then I meet with the architects. I help selecting the architects. I've been reviewing the projects. And now we are working with the plot, some technical stuff, but basically I'm managing the process. Okay, so it's the 3 archetypes I recognize there, people coming to Portugal and wanting property. Great question from Vicky. So get those personal questions in now, folks. Let's make it more personal. We found out how Anna operates. Let's answer your questions this evening on renting and buying. Yes, renting, because Vicky asked the question. The info for this discussion also mentioned renting in addition to buying. Does Anna's firm also work with folks interested in renting? Of course you do, right, Anna? Yes, I have also renting packages. We also have 3. We have the basic package that is for someone that wants to do more of their own footwork and be supporting research and in contacts. And we also do the legal verification of the contracts. They always go through our lawyer. But that package doesn't really include visitations. We'll maybe do 1 or 2 visitations if it's close by and it's not a big time consumption to the agent. But of course, this package also has a fairly low price. It's 175 euros. And once the rental is done, it's helping with the research, helping with the contact, and then reviewing the contract and making sure everything is right on the legal side. And we also help with the negotiations. So one of the common issues with expats is the down payment, not the down payment, the deposit. The guarantor. The guarantor is a big problem with expats because Portuguese landlords like to have the more guarantees possible. And I could give some background on where these go, but that probably would be a long conversation. Well, you get the gist of that. The landlord doesn't know this person, so presumably he's looking for some security, and you can help with that. Yeah, we help the negotiation with all of this. We have a few solutions for the guarantor situation. We also try and negotiate and manage pet situations that can be also quite complicated when it comes to rental. Like I was saying, we have the basic, that's, well, like I said, it's a more basic service. Then we have the premium that already includes up to 3 or 4 visitations.
and it includes post-contract support, so helping set up the utilities, the internet, and if you have any problem with the appliances, and just getting settled in there too. And then you have the Premium Plus that they have different durations. So the basic is is considered up to 45 days. The Premium is up to 90 days, and then the Premium Plus is up to 6 months, because it also includes support with obtaining visa, and it's mainly for the D7 visa. So supporting the application and getting the documentation and all of that.
Okay, amazing. All right, so there you go, Vicky. Definitely help with for renters there. If you've got any further questions on that, you know where to put them. Janet, good evening to you. Janet, great to have you here. Can you work with more than one buyer's agent in different areas? You did say you weren't exclusive, Anna, right?
No, I usually ask for exclusivity from my clients, because otherwise it's just pointless. Because we put a lot of work, and we do a lot of work before even the purchase is through, so it wouldn't make sense to just get the person and go somewhere else.
Okay, so let's tie that up. Let's tie that up with another
question.
What
we do is they can check with different agents of my own. So they can work with for example, my Algarve agent and my Lisbon agent at the same time.
Yeah, okay. Because Matty was asking about what your areas are. Do you feel you have a comprehensive coverage? I mean, presumably if you don't have coverage in an area where somebody wants to look, you wouldn't look for exclusivity there.
Well, at the moment I have coverage in the whole country. I'm just about to hire someone for Coimbra. That was the only area that I was missing. A bit more on the interior. Well, the people aren't right there, but it's considered, the traveling and so on. Of course, for rentals, that's a bit more complicated, but for buying, it is worth the trip. But like I said, the more complicated areas would probably be the more interior of Portugal, because most of my agents are more close to the coastline or central, but it's just about, going around that. Because, for example, I have some clients that their main requirement is having no neighbors. So it's not so much about location, but about matching their property requirements that are very specific. And this ends up getting quite a broad area. Yeah. But we are already expecting that, and we're already counting on having that dislocation expense, so that travel expense.
All right, Janet, there you go. I think that's a conversation to be had with you and Anna about what you'll benefit from by being exclusive there for you, Janet. Thank you for that question. Allegra, and we'll come to hands up session after the main recording, but I'm going to ask this or make this point that you made earlier on, Allegra, anyway, where you say how refreshing. The very same happens with renting, and yes, it is who you know, not what you know. And if you know Anna, I guess you're at a great advantage. It happened to me twice with renting using high-end real estate agents with dire consequences from Allegra there. So thank you for that comment. And you will come back to you a little bit later on, Allegra. Go on, sorry, Anna, carry on.
No, I just want to make a small note that another of the advantages is that because we are able to work with private and agencies, especially with rentals, we also work with private listings, and we go into off-market networking. Of course, this usually takes longer than just the markets, because it takes some time to get the contacts to come back to us. But that can be another advantage of working with someone that is working specifically for you.
And that's definitely about who you know rather than what you know, isn't it? Christine, question from you: how is it how likely is it that I find a sort of duplex in nature for which I can rent the second apartment and live in the other? That's funny. I had a look at a couple of properties that were over 2 floors this morning on Good Morning Portugal show. Are you finding these, and would you recommend this, where somebody is buying a split level, a duplex, or maybe even two dwellings on the same plot? And the supplementary question is, how much are the taxes to pay on the rental income? So are you searching on this basis for people to find their own home and something they can rent out next door or above or below?
It's actually not the first time I've been asked something like this. Sure. And I do have a client with a similar requirement active right now. The duplex situation ends up being a bit technical, because in Portugal, you have two types of property. You have the vertical property and you have the horizontal property. If it's a vertical property, it means the whole building is considered one house, one habitation. And if it's an horizontal property, it means that, you know, each different unit on that building is a different property.
Yeah.
So on this regard, when you have a vertical property, you will have all the expenses on the same property. So basically, your water will be all the same, your electricity will be all the same, and that will be a bit tricky from the rental situation.
Yes.
If you are going to do deep renovation work and you are going to, you know, reinstall the electric wiring and the plumbing, then you can separate this. Otherwise, it's a bit complicated, and unless you separate them, it's going to be the same. So that can be an issue with the sort of scenario you are describing right now. However, if you have separate units, or if you are talking about something more in the nature, what you have a bit more sometimes is farmhouses that have multiple independent houses that normally used to be, you know, storage and granary and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And those can be made into independent. So that can be an interesting option. As regards for them being in different floors and in the middle of nature, it's a bit of a harder requirement.
Okay, all right. But generally speaking, what the principle is best to go horizontal rather than vertical for ease of.
Depends on the goal. For example, I have a client that bought a noble house that was huge, and she's turning it into 8 apartments, and she's keeping it, one of them, for herself. But she's leaving the property as vertical because she's going to do, you know, the rewiring and everything, and she's just going to rent them out. So she has no need to convert into horizontal.
Okay, excellent stuff. There you go, Christine. Phil's here as well. Good evening. Great to see you here, Phil. What is your relationship with mortgage bankers and lawyers? That's a very direct question, isn't it, Anna?
Yeah, I have a lawyer on contract, and I work with clients' lawyers sometimes too. That I have absolutely no issue with that. And when clients are looking for a lawyer in a specific location, we also recommend through our network. My lawyer, the one that works directly for my company, is actually based in the Algarve, but most of the processes can be done digitally nowadays. So that's never been a problem so far. But if the client makes a point of having someone closer by, we will, network and recommend. Same thing goes for accounting. I work with an accountant. I'm very happy with her. She's actually a credit mediator, and she's my go-to person when it comes to credit and recommendations and managing credit for clients. But I have absolutely no problem with working with people that the clients choose.
Okay, excellent. There you go, Phil. And we didn't address that taxes on rental income.
True.
Jeff, thank you. I've been advised that the tax on rental income is between 8 and 10%, and we'll stay on taxes.
That would be nice.
It's a bit more than that, isn't it, in Portugal?
Yes. So the standard tax is 28%, but it actually goes down the longer the contract goes. So this actually can be also a complicated thing, because you have two rental regimes in Portugal. You have the holiday rental that we call alojamento local, that is commonly known as AL, and you have the long-term rental that actually legally can't be under 3 months, and to be between 3 and 6 needs to be under a special regime. So for the long-term rental, the flat tax is 28%. And the longer it goes on, the lower it becomes. So it's more than 5 years. It becomes, I may not be saying the numbers 100% right, but it's more or less this. So more than 5 years, it becomes 25. More than 10, it becomes 20. More than 20, it becomes like 15. And the lowest one is 10. But it's only after a long, long time. Yeah.
It's not like the government start paying you at the end of it. Okay. No, that's never going to happen, is it? Okay, well, that's interesting. And is that that doesn't mean you have to stay with the same tenants, but this is obviously a way of encouraging
No,
people.
it does. To do that, to have the lower ones, it means you have to stay with the same tenants.
Okay. So this is a protection for tenants and social housing, effectively, as provided
Kind
by
of, yeah.
it's an incentive
Because
to.
Portugal, it kind of likes to make the landlords out as social security.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm glad I asked you that, and that's great news. That's great news, isn't it, for the protection of somebody in a tenancy, and there's an incentive there for the person who
It
owns
can
the
be
property.
complicated for landlords, though.
Complicated in Portugal. I can't believe you're saying that. Okay. What is the percentage yearly for property taxes? So let's talk about those property taxes now.
Which
Christine,
one?
well, yeah, exactly. All of them, please.
Okay, so you have, let's say, 4 different property taxes. You have the EMT tax. So that's the transaction tax. It's the main one. It's the one that hurts. And you pay it on transaction, and it goes by tiers and by use. So I actually have a blog post and a chart that explain how that works on my website. But basically, the under 90, I think 6,000, it's actually no EMT. Then over that you have, I think it says until 150, then until 280. I don't know. There's like 4 tiers.
Mhm.
The lowest one, I think it's 3 or 4%, and the highest one it's 6.5%, and it's over 560 something K. So then up until this level, you have a deductible that it depends on whether the property is for private use or for renting out second property, so on. For private use, you have a higher deductible. And over the 560 something, there is no deductible.
Okay, that was
Then
one of them.
that's the first one. So the second one is the stamp tax. So that's a flat rate of 0.8%. And it's a very outdated and pointless tax, but it makes the state a lot of money. Then you have the EMI tax, and that is the yearly one, and it goes by town hall. And it usually is between 0.015 and 0.028 of the property value per year.
There you go, folks. Is that comprehensive enough for you? I think that'll do for now. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah. Great question from Bruce now, taking us to the rising prices that we're seeing in the US, for sure. Presently seeing huge surges in home prices, sometimes 30% year on year. Are areas of Portugal seeing similar tremendous inflation in real estate prices? Guys, quite possibly at the moment for a number of reasons, but we're not generally seeing 30%, are we? I saw that rents had gone up in the capital about 2%, right?
Yeah, it's not that high in buying, but actually I'm in Guimarães right now, and because like I said, I work in the whole country, and here in the north, like Braga and Guimarães, is where I'm seeing the fastest rising prices.
Really?
Because it used to be, especially Braga, it used to be a very, very affordable city until not too long ago, and prices are almost doubling in a very short amount of time. And this is like 2 reasons. Like I said, the foreign interest and people coming to buy from much higher markets, and they come here and they think, oh, this is so cheap, but they are comparing it to a completely different market, and they often end up overpaying. And that's once again comes back to the importance of having a buyer agent and someone that will make sure you don't do that. And this is a very big problem in Portugal right now, because we are attracting a lot of people from wealthier countries, and it's becoming a trend. You are seeing that the cities are rising, some more sustainably than others. But like I said, for example, in Braga, it's one of the places that I'm finding it a big concern of how fast it is going.
Okay, amazing. Where did you say that high rise was, just to reiterate that? In the north, which particular cities?
Braga. It's Guimarães is also more or less the same, but these two, it's quite impressive in a bad way, because it used to be a very, very affordable area, and you're seeing more and more people asking for prices in the Porto level, and this is something that started happening in like 3 years or so. Like it doubled. It was very intense.
Okay, lucky people who chose Braga a few years ago then. Hi, I forgot to read this, overlooked this earlier on. Forgive me. Larry and Linda. Hi, just back in Arizona after 3 wonderful weeks in Portugal, back in the winter to get more serious. Quite right, too. Well done, Larry and Linda. And sorry we missed the meetup. We'll get you next time. Okay, so great question from Bruce there. That was really good. Thank you, Bruce, on the trends. So not really getting to 30%. But it could in time, couldn't it? Dane, my wife and I are planning a 6-week visit to Portugal in September, October. The first and last week will be in Lisbon to visit family. But the other 4 weeks, we'd like to rent a place for 2 weeks each in some other areas with the intention of getting a feel for what it's like. So a bit of a base camp rental there just to get a feel for the area. Should we consult you first to determine which areas, cities we should check out? I'm guessing from your personal service that you offer and wanting to get to know the client, that would be a yes for Dane there, wouldn't it?
You can always book a call with me and I will advise you on your specific situation and given the feedback you give. Just a small note on the looking for 2 weeks on each time. You really have no way around going for holiday rentals with that. There is really no way around it.
Okay. All right. Andrew is asking again, as others are, the question, which areas do you handle? I mean, we're having this conversation, and basically, as I understand it, that's pretty much everywhere, including Queensland.
Yeah, I cover the whole country, and that's exactly the difference in my service. Yeah.
Okay. Ignace, good evening to you. Is it legal to rent long term and let the owner rent out the property during the high season? Is that some kind of loophole there?
Oh, you're talking about the Algarve, right? Where people will rent for like the 6 low season months, and then on the high season you have to come out and they will do AL. So it is legal, but there's some ways around those. So if you don't have an AL license, the illegal part will be doing the short-term rentals. If you do have an AL license, it's perfectly legal. You have no restrictions on the time you do the contract. When the property is registered in AL, though, it is mandatory to include all the utility and expenses. So you cannot charge that extra.
Very good. Thank you for that. If that's what you were asking, Ignace, let us know. But that's also fascinating. And thank you for your encyclopedic knowledge tonight, Savvy Cat Anna, who's with us on buying and renting here in Portugal. Julie, great question. This might fit into your investment category. Do you have insight or can you help locate land where 2 to 4 families could build? So a little bit of a cooperative, a community going on. We would ideally like to build energy efficient prefabricated home of around 100 square meters. Now there's an upsurge in this, isn't there? And
I'm actually doing something like that for a client right now, but the difference is they are looking for a property to rehabilitate. Yeah. But the process would be basically the same. On my end, it would be actually easier because in this case, we are reverse engineering, like we have the requirements of the apartments we need to fit in the building. And then we are trying to find a building that fits that. Okay. In your case, it is much easier because, we don't have to fit within a building. We just have a land that we have to make sure that fits the requirements. And in the way that's easier, but I'm guessing you are not looking for that either, but it wouldn't be in the middle of the city.
Okay, thank you for that, Julie. Is that right? And I think you might have a few direct messages going to you saying, yes, we want it in on this with energy efficient homes in an intentional community.
And I actually have some very good networks on that. I have a few contacts of people that specialize in sustainable building. And I also have a very good contact of an engineer specializing in solar panels that I've been meaning to do a kind of an interview on my own channel, but I never have the time to. So maybe I'll send them your way.
Send them my way, Anna. Let's get them on a Good Morning. Let's get them on a Good Morning Portugal show and have a chat with them because the roads will lead back to you, obviously, on that. And a great question from Tom here. Actually, before we move on to Tom, I just want to ask you if that's also another trend. You know, communal living, eco village.
Yes, it's definitely a trend. Yeah. And I've been seeing it come up a lot, both on conversations and on questions and, in setups like this. I definitely think it is a trend. And in my personal opinion, it's a good trend.
It is. I'd agree with you. I had a couple of guests this morning, revive.casa. Don't look now, look later, but revive.casa, an eco-village concept in the Algarve. I think there's going to be a hockey stick sort of upsurge in interest of these sorts of developers. And we've got another hockey stick on our hands. We've suddenly got loads of comments and messages in the chat. So let's get through as many of these as possible before we go to a more personal Q&A. Savvy Cat able to work magic? Not full stop. I'll complete the rest of the question. She's a cat lady,
Well,
though.
it
She's a
depends on
cat
the
lady.
magic.
Yes, the cat is a clue in helping D7 folks find a 12-month rental. So these are the gold dust things, leases at the moment, aren't they? Finding somewhere to satisfy the conditions of the D7. I'm being told by everyone I contact, says Tom, that there are no long-term rentals available until October at the earliest. Looking now.
Is that in the Algarve? Yeah, there is no miracles, but
any holiday place is gonna be a bit like that, right?
It's not like it's impossible, but it's something that it's going to take a while to achieve, and it takes a lot of off-market networking. It takes a long time to do that. It depends also a lot on the budget you have, because our Algarve is getting more and more inflated for all the reasons we already went over. But yeah, personally, the Algarve, it's one of the most complicated markets because it's very saturated, and it's kind of 10 dogs to a bone kind of situation, and that creates a lot of bad practices, like agencies take advantage of that. And yeah, it can be tricky.
Is that a Portuguese saying? Desde cães to a
Sim, desde cães.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I thought it might be. It sounds so Portuguese there. So, Tom, in answer to your question, not impossible. You might have to change where you're looking, and you might have to be patient. I mean, this is a familiar story that we're hearing, but it's not impossible. I think when people say that, they're not being very fair. What they're saying is that we can't find you somewhere at the moment as an agent.
Because most agents will work with their own portfolio. They won't be looking outside of that.
Yeah, there you go, Tom. iPhone Gary. If we buy a house in Portugal and there are rentals there on the property, what notice do you have to give the tenants to leave? Now, we indicated earlier on, didn't we, that a lot of the law here in Portugal is in favor of the tenants. Will Gary be able to do this?
Yeah. This is also not an easy answer, because it depends on how long those people have been there and what type of contracts they have. If it's a renewable contract and the person hasn't been there more than 20 years or is not over 65 years of age, then you can terminate in the regular terms. That is usually to, wait for the renewal term, and, you can just terminate at that. If they are over 65 years of age or have been there over 20 years, it is very, very complicated to terminate.
Quite right too, I say, but that's just a personal opinion. But there, Gary, you are going to have some issues depending on the status of the tenants there. Janet, there is a supplementary part to Janet's question from earlier on. Maybe, Janet, I could suggest we put that to Anna in the hands up session, which will begin in 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how many of these other more general questions we can get through. Good evening, all from Indivisible, Oregon. Thank you very much for providing us with so much valuable information. I would like to ask, if we were to visit Portugal in August for an exploratory trip, would it be possible to secure an apartment for a year from then, after taking care of all the required paperwork? Of course, that's got to be a yes, isn't it?
It's possible. It depends on the location. In the Algarve, it's going to be hard. In the most of the other cities, it's perfectly doable, because, like we were saying, the Algarve, it's very, very seasonable, very, very high demand.
Yep. Okay. I think we have. I think I'm just trying to keep up with the comments now, and we did deal with the tax. If we didn't, again, put your hand up at the end, and we can ask that again about if you've misunderstood anything or not heard what you wanted to hear about taxes on rentals. From Stuart, for the D7 visa, must the 12-month agreement be for a single property? Oh, this sounds like an interesting plot twist. Moving to Portugal in January of next year and would like to try renting in several areas before buying longer term rental. Oh, so could you have a composite of 3-4 month rental agreements? I suppose technically you could, but it would be difficult to get that to happen, wouldn't it, with landlords?
Yeah, the thing is, the requirement from the embassy, from the legal side of things, is to proof of adequate accommodation. This can be accomplished in a number of ways, and actually the ones that determine the length of these rental contracts is the local Portuguese embassy of the location you are coming from. And actually, different Portuguese embassies have very different requirements. Like the Brazilian embassy will give you, I don't know if it's a month or 3 months to find a rental once you come. The American embassy requires you to have a 1-year rental prior when you are making the application. I've had embassies that have requested a 6 months rental. So it's not really about the legal requirements. It's actually about the embassy. And I think the embassy will probably be a lot more comfortable with a single term contract. And the other problem with that is that medium-term rentals are very high demand, but very hard to achieve because of the legal situation. So basically, with the long-term regular contracts, because they have to be a minimum of 3 months, and on top of that, you have a stamp tax that is a percentage of the value of the rent. There is always the same, independently of how long it goes on. So you only pay it once, whether it is a 3 months rental or a 10-year rental. So most of the people that rent long-term want to actually rent long-term. Also because one of the advantages of renting long-term is that it's much much lower maintenance. Like you don't have a lot of upkeep. You just leave the people be.
Yes,
so this creates an issue with the medium-term rentals, and the medium-term rental end up being monopolized, so to say, by holiday rentals and becoming very expensive. So it would depend on whether or not your embassy would be taking the agreement of several holiday rental properties, because the holiday rental properties are actually not required to have a contract. It's like a hotel. They would just need to give you a receipt.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. There's an adjunct to this from Shiva. Thank you. Given the requirement for a minimum 12-month lease for the D7 visa, which is, as you said, is the requirement generally speaking, but there may be exceptions. How difficult is it to get out of the lease early? Now, this is a great question for renters, and you must have been asked this before. Let's say if after I actually get into the apartment in Portugal, but there are issues with it, or I just don't like it, or I fall in love with somewhere else, which is another reason somebody might have. Not sure if this one is correct, but I read online, the earliest I could break the lease would be 6 months in for a 12-month lease. What is the process and or requirements for the landlord to return any deposits to the renter? So getting out of agreements early, what's that like, Anna?
Okay, so you have to stay 1/3 of the agreed rental period and give 120 days of warning. However, this is of mutual choice. So basically, if you get to a point of I want to get out of here, and you say to the landlord, I want to get out of here, and he agrees to let you out early, you're good. If not, then that's the timeline. Regarding the deposits, that's one of the things we have issues of. The standard is to have either 2 to 3 months rent and 1 or 2 months deposit. So I never advise any clients paying more than 5 months, and 5 months is already pushing it. Legally speaking, it's actually legal to pay more than to request more than 3 rents in advance. And lots of landlords have that thing of asking for the whole year. That's not even legal. And you actually don't have a limitation on the deposit. And the deposit does have to be returned if given there is no damage. However, this is a bit problematic, because the court system in Portugal, we don't really have a small claims court. So this goes for both sides, both for the tenant and the landlord. It's bad for both. So if you have an issue, unless it's a very big loss, so on the 5K level, it's not going to be worth your time and money to go through the legal system. So that is something to take into consideration with the deposits, because if they refuse to give you back, it's going to be very hard to, get legal action on that.
Okay, well, that's bad news, but good advice. Thank you very much for that insight, Anna. And we'll go to a final question for the recording now, and then we'll have a chance for the premium members who are here. Thank you for being here tonight to have their personal questions answered. But we go to crystal ball territory now. Another question from Christine. I know foreigners told me that they would rather buy next year, that the real estate is a bubble of exaggerated prices right now, and it will go down next year. What are your beliefs on this, Anna? We won't hold you to
I hope that happens, but
right.
Honestly, from the trends I'm seeing, if the interest in the market doesn't go down, that's not going to happen.
Well, okay. All right. Best way to get in touch with you before we end this particular part of the recording?
So the best way is to send an email to contact@savvycatrealty.com. Honestly, don't contact me on Facebook. I rarely go there.
Okay. All right, we get it.
Not being
We
able
get
to.
it. You're busy. You're busy. Okay.
And I have my administrative staff, Katia. She's very fast to reply, and she will, point you in the right direction whenever needed.
Superb. That email address one more time, if you will.
Contact@savvycatrealty.com.
Perfect. Contact at savvycatrealty.com. It's been amazing talking to you so far, Anna. Let's go to a hands up Q&A now.